BRB changing my channel intro to Call Me Maybe. Hello, my name is Erica. Today I'm going to be jumping on yet another bandwagon. I've been really into just bandwagons lately. I think it's because I'm just tired, you know? Anyways, if you'll ignore the bigness of my hair today. Today we are going to be ranking some fanfiction tropes. So this has been something going around. I usually don't like pulling up my computer at the same time as I am also talking, but I think it worked the last time I did it, and so we're gonna try again. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there are 44 tropes here to go through, and I have 5 categories that I have divided things into. Top would be God tier content, obviously. Next goes the next category is finally some good food. And the middle category is hit or miss. These are things that either go really, really well for me or I absolutely cannot stand them. And there's really no in between. I've also made a category called a wee bit uncomfortable. These are those things that probably will have an in-between. Like, yeah, there are some standout cases, but for the most part, I'm just not into these things. And then the last category, the category that I am least interested in, is my ace ass could never. Because usually these are these things that I just don't read in fanfiction tropes because I'm not really into, like, I'm not a porn person, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that makes you immediately click off this video, because there will not be horny takes in this video because I am not a horny person. If you came to this channel for horny takes, you're in the wrong place, my friends. So let's get started. We're starting off with a strong start. We have the alpha, beta, omega system, symbolized by this little wolf. When I was in middle school, I was like intrigued by the alpha, beta, omega dynamic. I thought it was interesting, but this was also because I read a lot of warrior cats and a lot of talking animal books. And so anything to do, and I was really into dogs. Oh, I was really into dogs. I read, like, I was writing at the time some like warrior cats, but it was with wolves for a while, in middle school especially. And so today, I think I would put this in my ace ass could never, because like I don't think I would ever have clicked on an ABO fic ever, just because the dynamics are really uncomfortable for me. But I will put it in a wee bit uncomfortable just for respect to my middle school self, who had a lot of interest in wolves and in power dynamics, but didn't have that interest maybe for the right reasons. Amnesia. So amnesia, I mean, I'm sure y'all know what amnesia is, but the idea of an amnesia fic is somebody loses their memory and forgets probably their significant other, and they have to go through figuring out that they are in love or not. Maybe they're a new person now, whatever. I'm gonna put this in hit or miss because I really like this idea and I think it can be done really, really well, but I also think it can be tropey as all get out and just like not good. And not that tropey as all get out is necessarily bad, but just for this one in particular, I feel like it doesn't like work as well, because I need an amnesia fic to really question like what it is about memory that like builds our idea and our affection for a person, and what it is to be like a person without your memories and a person with your memories. Oh, interesting stuff, but it has to be done well, you know? Angst. Angst for angst's sake is annoying. I will give you that. But angst in the sense of pining, good shit. So I'm tempted to put this in hit or miss because it really depends on the angst. Like if it's miscommunication angst, really not into that. If it's like, I'm a bad person because I stepped on an ant one time, I am not compelled by that. If it's like angst as in, this person should never be with me because I am too dangerous, honestly, that can be some pretty interesting content. So I'm gonna put this in finally some good food, I think. Because honestly, angst can drive an entire relationship and it can drive a character's personal growth, which is part of a relationship. So that's it. Arranged marriages. I love arranged marriages. I think I'm putting arranged marriages in god tier content. Of course there are cases where arranged marriages are just bad. I think like honestly everything in here is hit or miss, right? To a certain extent, like there can be things that are done really, really well and things that are done really, really poorly. But arranged marriages are so interesting to me because I fully believe that a marriage is just like a legal contract, and like what happens when you are in a relationship and you decide to invite society into your relationship. And so I think it's so interesting because an arranged marriage is not ever about the two people in it, right? It's about like so much more. It's about how society views them and how their parents view them and their friends and family and so on and so forth. I just think that's really good fodder for developing these two characters, and especially because they kind of have to become allies. Because they're forced into the same situation together, and so I think it can be really good food for thought, but also food for like a relationship growth, and I think it can be very, very good. There's so many different ways this can be done. As if you've watched my previous videos, you may know that one of my favorite books of this year is, one of my favorite books of last year is We Set the Dark on Fire, which is about an arranged marriage. There are also arranged marriages in other books I loved this year, like Crier's War, and The Storm Crow. So yeah, I think it's just a really rich opportunity to force characters together, and I really like it. I don't like babies, so I'm putting that in my ASAS could never. And it's not because babies themselves are bad. I do like the trope where where like two characters have to take care of something together. That can be pretty good, but I hate babies. That's it. Sharing a bed, God tier content. Very little needs to be said there. Like, I don't think there are many people who dislike this. I tend to put it in all of my work just like once or twice. I think intimacy is so interesting and like can just be huge in the development of characters, and like physical space is a big part of that. But I also think it can be a very like great opportunity for characters who aren't going to be in a like high-key sexual relationship or a high-key romantic relationship, just to share intimacy and the quiet of like feeling somebody's weight moving the bed that you were sleeping on. Oh, there's something about it, you know? So a bang or die fic, which is the next one we got here, is a fic where characters are put in a situation where they either have to have sex or be killed. Listen. I think it's really uncomfortable. I understand that it can be a good, again, if you're looking for horny content, I'm not your gal. I think the idea of being in a tough circumstance where you have to fess up to your feelings, that's one thing. The idea of anyone forcing sex in any situation, okay. Body swap. I'm gonna put this in a wee bit uncomfortable because I feel like it can be entertaining, and like it can be really interesting to see how like other people, to see two people react to being viewed as a person that they are not, right? And viewed as that person, and like I think it can be really interesting and lead to some drama, but it also can be really uncomfortable when the writer makes it way too much about bodies and like about the like physical being of someone and like how much of you is your body and so on and so forth. I don't know. That there's a lot of things that can open that I'm just not super comfortable with. So that's that. Coffee shops. I'm gonna put coffee shop AU in finally some good food. The reason I don't think it's god tier content is because I hang out in coffee shops all the time, and like I am a regular at a lot of coffee shops, or I was before the pandemic hit, and I don't get how it would happen, you know? Like it's a good setting and I love coffee shops, but also I like have been in too many coffee shops without any romance happening to like be swayed and be bought over by a coffee shop AU, if that makes sense. College AUs. Okay, college AUs for me are hit or miss, and this is because I think college is different for a lot of different people, and I think it can be really interesting as like a thought experiment almost to put, especially fantasy characters, into a college setting, so you can think about like what would their majors be. I think that's really fun. That's about it. I feel like a college AU is so vague. Like I really like found family college AUs because you get to see like them being forced together in like dorm rooms or like so on and so forth. But I don't think by itself it can be amazing, and I also think it can be very much like not my thing depending on how the writer is writing college, because there's so many different college experiences, and I want my college experience represented on page for the nostalgia of it. That's what I want. A crack fic is usually I guess this is a relationship, like romance specific one, so I would guess this is like a pairing that is very out of the ordinary or like doesn't make a whole lot of sense. For me, this is a hit or miss. I think some really smart pairings have been created out of the crack fic environment. I guess this could also be the crack fic where nothing makes sense, in which case I'm going to put it in a wee bit uncomfortable, because I feel like this is often the domain of like people who are not taking the story very seriously, and I want stories, you know? I don't want just like almost cringy like humor forced into the whatever's happening. I want it to make sense. It's gotta make sense, you know? It's gotta have some logic. A crossover is when you take a bunch of characters and or setting pieces and or plot pieces from one media universe and you dump some of them into another media universe and see what happens when the characters interact. I'm going to call this a hit or miss. I have read some really good crossovers. I think it can be really interesting when you put characters from one universe into the setting of another universe. I don't really like crossovers where the characters are aware that it's a crossover. I much prefer crossovers where you're just like it's more just like an AU, honestly, where your like characters are just in the setting of another universe. I think that's really interesting because it leads to a lot of imaginings of things. Crossover pairings can be interesting and I'm totally fine with it, but yeah, it's got to be done well. I don't have a lot to say for that one. A dark fic. I'm not really familiar with this, so I'm going to put it in a wee bit uncomfortable because like I don't think I've ever read one. And maybe that just tells you a bit about who I am as a person, but like I'm not really interested in sort of the like demonic darkness, angst, but like happy about it vibe of that I usually associate with dark fic. And yeah, I don't really have a lot to say on that one. I think it can lead to some really uncomfortable, like physically violent places and like invasive places mentally and physically, and I'm not super into that. Major character death. Hit or miss. I think there's nothing wrong with reading a really impactful story about what would happen if one of the characters died. I don't really like watching characters die in one another's arms very much, but I would be fine with like watching a story about someone coming to terms with their feelings over a character. It's just, you know, there's a time and a place for it. You've got to be ready to feel sad, and usually I don't like to seek out things that make me feel sad, but you know, maybe. That car that just honked outside agrees with me, I guess. Canon divergence. Canon divergence is when the writer of a fic takes the story and diverges from it in some way that changes the rest of the outcome of the story. This can be as large as what if two characters knew each other before the start of the story, or what if one character who was on the bad guy's side was actually on the good guy's side. This can be as small as like towards the ending something else happens because I didn't like the ending and I want to fix it. We're getting into fix it fic later, but like, yeah, that's canon divergence. Honestly, I think canon divergence can be done so well and it can be so interesting, but there's a time and a place for it, so I'm going to put it in hit or miss because like I feel like there are some really, 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 really good canon divergence fics out there, but they're few and far between. I think regularly canon divergence doesn't really work because it moves too far away from the story without moving the characters far away from the story, if that makes sense. Like I think the story has a big effect on the characters, and if the characters don't change with the changes in the plot, it doesn't really work for me. We've talked a bit on my channel about enemies to lovers. For me, enemies to lovers is a wee bit uncomfortable. I think because a lot of people mistake and like get confused enemies to lovers and like rivals to lovers, and I really don't vibe with characters who are actively trying to do things that are objectively horrible to one another. I just am not interested in watching any sort of like relationship bloom out of hatred. I don't think that's realistic. I love when a story takes a character who is an enemy and brings them to a friend and then moves them to a lover, but I'm not really into enemies to lovers in I think the like traditional sense where a lot of the like romantic and sexual tension between characters is because of their dislike of each other. Not really my thing. Established relationship. Listen, I love established relationships. I'm putting that in finally some good food. I think like in fan fiction, established relationships are usually not as much of a thing because we're really into slow burn mutual pining 100,000 words, but established relationships can be really interesting, especially for characters who have been acting in canon like they're in an established relationship. It can be a really nice way, like fan fiction can be a really nice way to get a sense of what that would be like, and so I enjoy it a lot in that way. Yeah, putting that there. Fairy tale AU. Listen, I don't like fairy tale AUs. I'm not sure where to put this one because it's not like I object to it on a moral level, which is what a lot of these things are. Or like I object to it because I am not like into some of the things it brings up. I'm not into them. I'm gonna put it in the lowest level because I just think they're boring. Like if the story is more interesting than a fairy tale, why would you make it a fairy tale? Fairy tales aren't that interesting by themselves. Fake relationship. This is similar to an arranged marriage, but different, and so I'm gonna put it in. But put it in finally some good food. I feel like it can be really funny. I feel like it can lead to a combination of like fun, like bonding, and also just like humor. And so I find that really entertaining. I think a fake relationship is fun because like both people are agreeing to it. That's kind of the whole deal. But that something changes in that relationship, and I feel like it's a great source of tension, and so I really enjoy it. It's not quite an arranged marriage though, because it doesn't bring in the whole aspect of who are you in respect to society, which is what I am about. Fix it, fix. Fix it, fic is when you don't like the ending of a story, and so you change it, or you change something significant about it. My entire experience with the legendary, my entire experience with Voltron Legendary Defender makes me very compassionate towards Fix It Fix. If you know, you know. I'm gonna put it here. It's not quite God tier content, but I really think Fix It Fix are a good way to undo some of the bad decisions that writers in official content sometimes make. And that's that. Fluff, in which nothing happens, is okay. I'm gonna put it in finally some good food because it is good. It is entertaining. Fluff is always nice, and it's nice to read when you really are invested in a couple and you just want to see them having a good time together. I think it can be really well done. It's not quite God tier because there's no conflict, and I am reading for conflict. Thank you. Friends to lovers, God tier. It's the only way to do romance right, in my opinion. People have to be friends before they can fall in love. That's just how I go. It's just what I think. A genfic is one in which the romance is not the main goal. I think there can be a time and a place where I don't want that and I just want to read fluffy romance. But for the most part, I do like fiction or fan fiction that does get into more detail than just the relationship at its heart. I like when there's a lot more character development individually, especially if I'm like choosing to get invested in something, you know? Hurt comfort. Hurt comfort on its own, can get a little repetitive, you know? But I am going to put it in God tier because I do think it's the right combination of like good, solid, emotional vulnerability and tears, and also a little bit of just like solid affection and finding out that someone else can help you improve your life, and that is a good thing. Historical AUs, similar to fairy tale AUs, it's kind of boring. Honestly, like, unless somebody's gonna go do all this research about the historical setting, not really into it. And like, if you're gonna do all the research for a historical setting, just write a historical fiction book. Also, I don't really read historical fiction very often, so it's not super surprising I'm not into this. High school AU, I'm not into it. The reason being, the college AU is interesting to me, because the college AU invites you to understand how this character is different from his or her peers with like what they're studying and what they're interested in and what they choose to do with their time. High school AUs kind of suck because high school kind of sucks, and there aren't many roles you can play in high school, and you're stressed and in pain all the time, and you can't even properly navigate yourself, and you have to go back to your parents' house at the end of the day, and that sucks. Huddle for warmth, you know, it's a solid trope. I wouldn't say it's God tier content, but it's a solid trope. You gotta stay warm and it's cold, so you huddle together. It's how it goes. It's, again, invites intimacy for survival. I don't think it has to be romantic, and so, yep, I don't really know what else to say for that. It's good. It's never a bad thing, but it's not by itself like, oh yeah, that's the stuff, you know? I'm confused as to why humor is on its own. I guess this is like fiction in which humor is a really big point, and so I think it can be hit or miss. I think humor can be very, very like cringy at times when authors are trying to force it, and like when that's the point of the story. I also think it can move towards crackfic a lot. Like there's a big line there where someone will try to make a funny fic, and then they'll just make it like into a crackfic where nothing really makes sense. And again, I need it to make sense, but I do like some humor in my stories. Thank you. The next one is In Fino Veritas, which is a drunken confession. Listen, this can be hit or miss. I don't like the idea of someone making a fool of themselves under the influence of alcohol. That's not really what I'm into, but I do think it can be nice when two characters have been circling around each other for ages to give them a little push and let their inhibitions down and let them do the rest. I just think it has to be handled very carefully, which is why it's in this category. First kiss, hit or miss. I don't have a lot of strong feelings on this because I think it can just be I don't know. I don't know why we need to make a huge deal out of a first kiss. I think it can be cute if the characters are younger and if you're writing like a growing up narrative, but I'm not, I guess, I don't think it's a super big deal. Yeah. Magic AU. I'm confused by this because on the one hand, I do enjoy watching characters have magic, but on the other hand, most of the stuff I read already has the characters having magic. So I'm not sure if this is I don't know. I think it can depend on what the type, what we're talking here. I think if it's a de facto crossover with a magic system you really like, it can be really interesting, and I am into it. But I also, I don't know. Most of the stuff I read already has magic systems, and so this isn't really a necessary thing where I'm chilling. Miscommunication, my ace could never. Communication is the basis of a relationship, and it's not cute when people misunderstand each other and think the worst of one another. It's not cute. It's not fun. I don't like it. The end. Missing scenes, god tier content. This is the point of fanfiction. The point of fanfiction is also to develop your writing skills and engage with the content with the community and all of these other things. But it's also to give missing content that you thought should be there but isn't. Fanfiction can really deliver and help you understand characters through scenes that should have been in the main content. You know, mutual pining, god tier, easy enough. I love it. I live it. I breathe it. Mutual pining is love. Mutual pining is life. The end. Sex pollen. Sex pollen is when someone gets infected with a virus or pollen or other sort of thing and are super horny. If you're not going to have sex with someone normally, I don't think you should do it under the influence of a drug. And that's that on that. I hate babies. Pregnancy fic goes in the bottom category because I hate babies. PWP stands for porn without plot. I understand that there is a time and a place for porn without plot. I've read it. I've never really enjoyed it for obvious reasons, you know. But I'm gonna put it in a wee bit uncomfortable because I don't think it's the kind of thing where if I'm scrolling through a tag a pair of characters that I really like together, I might go through a porn without plot just to cleanse the palate a little bit and keep myself awake and that sort of thing. But it's not, that's not what I'm seeking when I go online. So I'm so into royalty, but again, I think it can be hit or miss because I think royalty needs to be examined as a political institution in a political form, and so I think if it's just hey, let's dump them into royalty because dresses and command, that's fine, but it can do a lot more than that, or it can do a lot less than that. And so I think it depends on what you're creating when you put these characters into royalty. Slow burn, the only thing that matters. Slow burn is love, slow burn is life. Mutual pining, slow burn. I'm so into it. Okay. Got 5 left. I've been talking for so long, my voice hurts so much. Soulmate AU. Listen, I love a good soulmate AU. I'm going to put it in finally some good food because I think there can be some really, really bad ones, especially ones that don't show the characters as wanting to be in a relationship with the other and feel like they're forced into it, or when it's not that deep. But I really think there's some fascinating soulmate AUs out there, and I am really interested in them. And depending on the pairing, it can just be so good and so angsty or so fluffy, and I think there's just a lot to get out of a soulmate AU. Time loop fics. I really don't read these, and so I'm going to put it in a wee bit uncomfortable because I think there can be some interesting stuff there. I think time loops in general are some fodder for drama and some fodder for conflict, but by themselves, I don't find them super interesting or compelling. I kind of feel like you go backwards with them. That's kind of the intent, and so I don't think it's for me, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Love triangles, the most hit or miss thing to ever hit or miss. I think a love triangle can work or it cannot work, depending on the characters, depending on the story itself. I think, so I've talked about this before in the previous video I made quite recently, where I talked about romance tropes, so I'll recommend that to you to get more into detail on how I feel about love triangles. But in essence, a love triangle can work. I just don't think if like two love interests are turned into symbolic ideas of which way the protagonist should go, it's not that interesting. I really think it needs to be more complex than that, and I don't like it when somebody just gets to play the role of the scorned, jealous lover for the rest of the story. So, an unhappy ending. Why would I read an unhappy ending? Just why would I? That's not the point, you know? That's not why I'm reading. I guess it goes with major character death. Okay, I'll move it up here, because I guess it goes with major character death, and like, I guess I will read it, you know, like, I guess, and there's a time and a place, but for the most part, I want an ending that's at least bittersweet. Unrequited love, a wee bit uncomfortable for me. I don't like those fics where you just watch the character pining for somebody that doesn't love them back. I'm just made sad by it, and I don't like seeking out things that make me sad. And unlike major character deaths and unhappy endings where, like, unlike major character death, which can be, like, uplifting in some way because it makes you come to terms with death as a thing, unrequited love is just sad. Oh, my voice went away. Good thing this is the last one. Unrequited love is just sad. And I don't like it because it's sad and it's too real, you know? Like, it's too much. So those are the 44 tropes that I have ranked. You know my god tier content because I've put it in everything I write, and the books I love the most have these things in them. But also the things I love the most are either directly appeal to the reason why fanfiction exists, or just my favorite romance tropes, or are just like the occasional thing that interrogates society really critically, so on and so forth. Those are my ratings of these 44 fanfiction tropes. I'm super interested in seeing the differences that people have in these. I've like looked through the community boards on these for like 30 minutes at a time, several days in a row. So if you've done this as well, I would love to see your answers. I would love to talk more about like what you love or hate in fanfiction tropes. This is, again, my perspective on this is I used to read a lot of fanfiction and then I slowly backed off of it, and now I will go through phases where I read a lot of fanfiction in one night and then don't read fanfiction for months at a time. So that is all I have for you. Thank you guys for watching this video, and if you enjoyed this, I do a similar thing where I talk in more detail about a couple of romance tropes in a previous video, which I will link up top. That's it, I think. So yeah, have a great day everyone. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.